Hey everybody, I'm Paul.
And I'm Andrew.
And welcome to the Fan Voice. Today we have with us Bariah, Steiner, and Atticus Farr to help us break down a brand new trailer for Street Fighter V, revealing Chun-Li Nash, who is a returning fighter, correct?
Yeah.
So say hi, guys.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, yes, hello.
Hi, guys.
Hi.
Yeah, so we talked with Atticus and Bariah a little about Overwatch back in the day, and they're returning to help give us this awesome breakdown of this trailer. And I'm excited.
Oh, yeah.
Andrew's
I'm
excited.
So, it's...
Yeah, so this dropped earlier today, which is the 24th of February. And they've been kind of slowly just like teasing things for Street Fighter V for a while, and I think this is the first big kind of announcement in a while.
Yeah, this is the first major one that they've done.
Outside of the initial announcement.
Well, there was the initial announcement, and so there was the initial announcement, which got leaked, unfortunately, with a really great trailer, and it was actually only supposed to debut at the PlayStation event. And then what ended up happening is it leaked a little bit before then, and so the guys who are running it were just kind of like, well, crap, it got leaked. That was like our big ones. Like, what are we going to do now? And what they ended up doing was Capcom was just kind of like, okay, well, shit. Here, have gameplay. So like this huge gameplay trailer. And of course, everybody's freaking out. Everybody's trying to figure out what's going on. And as like a huge fan of the series, which I'm just gonna throw out there, Street Fighter is one of like my big series. Like everybody has the fighting games they love. I grew up on Street Fighter with my brother when I was younger, and that's like I have memories of being like 6, 7, just sitting in my living room playing Street Fighter 2 on our freaking like Sega and NES for hours and hours on end. And of course, I was that kid who was just kind of like, oh my god, that was so cool! Why would you do that? And then like that's how I started learning how to throw freaking fireballs. And then
I was a kid with Soul Calibur, and I was like, yeah, boob physics.
Yeah, boob, boob physics, go bounce. So it's overall, it's just kind of like the way a lot of Street Fighter teases have always like gone is they've always been like big cinematic trailers, like one after another, like for like 3 or 4 or what have you. And so they revealed like 5 at the PlayStation Experience with actual gameplay, and that was really crazy, and it was really big. It was a really big deal. And then about a month later, around December 12th of last year, was it was the Capcom Cup. And what ended up happening with the Capcom Cup is it's like the Capcom's own sponsored fighting game series event.
Right.
So it's basically a tournament that Capcom is hosting themselves. And so, you know, everybody goes through the rounds, all the games are played, and then they finished off with Street Fighter 4, and I can't remember who the winners were, but they ended off everything, and then they're talking about more events about it, and then they're like, yeah, but everybody's here for Street Fighter V. We know you want to see it, so let's go. So after like, you know, a 4 or 5 hour long tournament, they finally show another trailer, and it's an extended gameplay trailer. So it shows a lot more, has a lot more to it, and everybody's sitting there freaking out, theorizing about what's going on here, and then the greatest thing ever happens, and it's Yoshinori Ono, who's one of the guys who runs Street Fighter behind the scenes. He comes out dressed as Charlie, like he's got the green pants, he's got the yellow vest. But this guy's not exactly fit, so he's wearing one of those really crappy blow-up muscle shirt things, and he's got like the like wig on and the glasses. He's like, hello. And it was right after that trailer had that like scene where Charlie goes down, picks up his glasses, and puts them on. And so of course, like everybody's like, "Oh my god!" yeah. And it's just kind of funny because everybody's like, "Oh, Charlie's back! Oh my god, Charlie's back!" And Yoshinori Ono was like, "Nash is back, yes, because in Japan he's called Nash, and in America he's called Charlie."
It doesn't make sense, but okay.
It doesn't make sense, yeah, but it is what it is.
All the name changes are crazy because they go through that. Like,
it happens so often. It happens so often, but the big, well, I could get into why they do that, but that's not why we're here. But the big thing is just kind of like they showed that off, and then Mike Ross and Combo Fiend, who Combo Fiend was a tournament player for a really long time, and he actually works at Capcom, like with Street Fighter and balancing and stuff now. And so he comes out, and so does Mike Ross, who's like a really well-known Street Fighter player, and they actually were like, hey, how cool would it be if we got to play Street Fighter V for everybody? Let's do that.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And so here's a funny little tidbit about that is like I was super stoked for that release and like that whole trailer and like because I wanted to know more about Street Fighter V because I love Street Fighter.
Colorado.
Yeah, we were in Colorado on vacation. And in Colorado, I was getting like no signal on anything, so I'm on my phone, standing on the bed, holding it up, like barely getting a signal. But I'm like, I can make out these pixels. And then Bariah just looks at me. She's like, "You are dedicated." I'm like, "I think I see it." So,
I feel your pain. I feel your pain. I had to watch Last Evo with like no internet whatsoever, so it was me and CT on the lowest setting, and we were basically watching a red and yellow block move back and forth.
Exactly. And so, like, then, you know, Sony comes out and talks about how they're basically, you know, funding Street Fighter V and all the big stuff that's going on. And so it's like, oh my god, that's so cool. And so then they had like the whole thing where they're playing and people are theorizing, watching, and it's all so great. And then it's like, oh, this is amazing. And that was the last time we had any like solid Street Fighter footage or news to go off of.
Yeah.
And so until today. And
well, there was that one tournament they did that Event Hubs had to go out to and actually film themselves.
Yeah,
and
but they didn't do anything new.
Yeah, but it was like that's the other news we got, but it was like really bad.
Yeah, but all that was the Taipei game show, and all they did was show off like a little bit more of the footage, and they played an exhibition match the exact same way Combo Fiend and Mike Ross did.
Chun-Li's broken.
Apparently, which I main Vega and Chun-Li, and my sub is the random button. So I don't mind it at all. But like the big thing is that was. I really don't know how to word it because we're so early in development with the game that we don't have a solid idea of alpha or beta or what's where. But the gameplay itself, it looked decent, but there were a lot of parts that were clunky, a lot of parts that weren't really that smooth. So like a lot of the people were legitimately starting to actually get worried about how the game was going to look and how it was going to feel and how it was going to play because we're sitting here with this game and we're watching it and we're all excited for it, but once the rose tinted glasses or whatever come off and you're sitting here going, all right, I already know about this, so I want to see some new stuff, and I'm no longer sitting here going, oh my gosh, Street Fighter V, but I'm actually watching and I'm like, this is really clunky, like this is not good.
But again, it's pretty early in development.
Exactly, and so of course everybody's just like, oh man, hope it gets better, and of course it's going to. But it was nice today because it was nice because the trailer came out today with the tease and everything, and so like the first thing you see is like a little bit of gameplay, and in that like first couple seconds, everything just immediately looks and flows better. It's actually kind of crazy. So it's like, oh, look at how much more smooth it is. Yeah.
Well,
and
you
then
can also notice a lot of the lighting changes too, and the scenario's been detailed a lot more.
Yeah.
And huzzah, there are actually people in the background.
Yeah, that's what I noticed immediately too. Is I noticed that there seemed to be a lot more details, which is what I expect with more time development and more time in development. Is that there's just more details on the fighters in the background, and it seems to like you said, Atticus, seems to flow a lot better.
And you can tell that they really did flesh out more of it because you have the people in the background, you have the moving cars, you have like the actual lights actually
accurate lighting.
Yeah, quite a
bit. Instead of just a flat light.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so like that just happens in the first like 20 seconds or so of the trailer. Like I have this playing right now. And so then the next thing you see around 27 seconds, that's when Chun-Li starts moving and she does her intro, and automatically it flows.
Per second.
Exactly, it flows so well. It all flows. Yeah. So it's like they finally are, getting back on it. And then right then, Charlie comes in, and everybody, of course, is like, oh shit, what's going on? And then it comes up, and you see he's like really kind of ripped apart, and you're like,
Yeah,
just kind of like, I'm just sitting here, I'm like, oh my god, Charlie's back. Oh, what the hell happened to you? Right, so I'm like, and it's just kind of like sitting here, and everybody's like, oh my god, it's Charlie, and I'm like, oh my god, he's literally got staples in his fucking forehead.
His fucking forehead.
He's got like a Frankenstein thing going.
Yeah, which is really crazy, but it's not on his entire body. It's only on his right side.
Yeah.
His forearm, part of his shoulder, and his like the right side of his face. And so I'm sitting here, I'm like, well, okay, cool. We got like super undead Charlie. Let's rock.
Yeah, right.
And like the background on Charlie is it's so crazy to see him again because the last time we saw him was in Marvel vs. Capcom 1. And that was so long ago, it's not even funny.
Oh my goodness.
It's like, holy crap, he's back. He's like, this guy's back. And in the Street Fighter storyline, like, there was Street Fighter 0, 1, 0, 2, and 0, 3, and in America they were called Alpha 1, Alpha 2, and Alpha 3. And so it was a big focus on the Street Fighter characters kind of before they got to where they were in 2. So like Ryu has the white headband and he's still training, he's still learning. Ken has like the super long hair and he's got this like young attitude, like I can fuck up anybody. Exactly. It's like before he like started getting more disciplined. And you have all the different characters and you learn more about them, and that's where Charlie was. Now, a lot of people, if you look at it from an outside point of view, you're just kind of like Charlie is a version of Guile with a orange yellow sweater vest with hair that is equally unfathomable.
Yeah.
Like just
looks like pasta in the trailer.
It looks like pasta. The hair does look like pasta to a degree.
Yeah.
And so what ended up happening is just kind of like you're like, okay, so from the outside point of view, and you're playing him, he's just pretty much Guile moveset, Sonic
like
Boom,
what
flash
Red was.
kicks.
Yeah.
But for 3. And so it's just kind of like, okay, so he just kind of plays a lot like Guile. All right, is what it is. And then in Street Fighter 0-3, it's kind of crazy because it does a little bit of a weird thing. But the storyline is Charlie goes off. Basically, the big thing is Charlie is this guy who fights for good, hates Shadaloo, hates Bison, and he's like the American military man who just wants to help everybody, protect and serve.
America before Guile was America.
Timeline-wise, yes, but Street Fighter 2 was before 0.
We're talking timeline though.
Timeline, yes, he was basically the original Guile before Guile. And so the storyline, what ends up happening is he basically, there's 2 different paths, there's 2 different ways it happens, and both of them kind of lead to the same thing. And one of which is he ends up getting to Bison, fights him, and basically gets rocked. And so they're fighting or whatever, and Bison just kind of says, all right, well, I'm done with you. And then the fight happens, and Charlie basically goes sailing off a cliff down a waterfall, and Bison's just kind of like, well, you're dead. You were the only one I was really afraid of. All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and float off in the distance and not look for your body. He doesn't check on Charlie's body. That's the thing. So that's where one of the big theories kind of has a starting root, I guess. And what ends up happening is he doesn't look for Charlie's body, so it's not confirmed that he's dead. But of course, any fighting game is going to do that with their characters that are popular. It's like, okay, so let's make it look like he's dead, but not really dead. And then you have the Street Fighter 0-3 continuation, kind of like the unfortunate long-running joke of the whole Super Alpha Turbo Mega Edition or whatever, where you had another edition of 0-3. And in this one, Charlie wasn't playable, but Guile was. But it still took place in the same storyline. And so Guile and Charlie were actually working together. And the thing about them in the story is that they're actually best friends, they're great buddies, and Guile's a part of the Air Force, and Charlie, it's conflicted because some people think he's part of the Air Force, but some people think he's part of the aviation of the Marines Corps because of the planes that are on the background of his stage. But any which way, you get to the end, and there's this big fight that happens between Bison, Guile and Charlie. Bison, Guile, and Charlie. Huge fight happens. Oh, we're blowing up the Shadaloo base. Oh, shit's happening. All right. And then they're running, and Bison's like, no, I will stop you. In the traditional bad guy kind of thing where, like, I'm going to stop you amidst the burning wreckage. And so Charlie's like, go, Guile. Get out of here, bruh. I'll stop him, bruh. And then, Guile's running off. No, bruh. And then pretty much Guile makes it out okay. But Charlie is basically missing in action at this point. And that's kind of where the things left off with Charlie. And a lot of this, mind you, happened in Brazil. So you kind of like fast forward in the timeline, and all of Guile's stuff is consistently about finding Charlie, because the government's like, Charlie's dead, bruh, and he's like, no, he's not, man, I swear, he ain't dead, bruh.
I love him.
I love him. And so what ends up happening is all of Guile's story through 2 is consistently about finding Charlie, about finding him and making sure he's alive. And this is where the problem with Street Fighter is it's been going on for so long that there's movies, animes, comics, mangas, like there's so much stuff. There really is so much stuff. And so you start blurring the line between what's canon and what's not, and it's like, what exactly is the story compared to what this one is showing me? Because you start thinking like, all right, well, in this movie, this happened. Why isn't it happening in the game? And the only thing you can sit here and think is, because that was the movie with Van Damme. Nobody talks about that. Tuesday. We'll get to that later. So what ends up happening in that part of the story, though, canonly, is, Charlie's missing at this point. And you flash forward, and in Brazil, suddenly there's this new fighter, and he's this all-green dude, red hair, electricity, and he's Blanca. And so the long-running theory has been that whatever happened to Charlie basically turned him into Blanca. He might have gotten kidnapped by Bison, and he got experimented on, because Bison has this great thing where he loves to experiment on every freaking person who comes through his door. So, like, because he does the psycho power thing where he jumps bodies, and he always tries to find a better body for himself. It's a really classic, like, body snatcher thing. Yeah, true. But what ends up happening is you find out about all this, and, then the big theory is like, well, what if Charlie became Blanca? There's theories, there's ways it could happen, and then what didn't help is that every movie and comic series decided to take that and run with it. You start watching the movies, and it's kind of like, oh, there's Charlie, oh no, he's being turned into Blanca, we have to stop him, and it's like, it's not confirmed, but every movie is taking this and running.
So they basically did all that without Capcom's blessing?
Pretty much.
Oh my goodness.
That's why the movies were absolutely terrible.
Yeah.
You should never ever watch them.
Yeah, well, that's why that one.
They're really bad.
Oh, dude, they are really bad. But the great thing is Capcom acknowledges how bad they are, and I'll get to that later.
Yeah.
And so it's yeah, we'll get to that later. So that's kind of where it left off. And then in Street Fighter 4, and Street Fighter kind of has a really funky timeline where it goes Street Fighter 0, and then 1, and then 2, and then 4, and then 3. Kind of like Devil May Cry, how it goes 3, 1, 4, 2. Really odd. But in Street Fighter 4, Charlie is still dead, but Guile is still looking for him, and this is like the most up-to-date one, Ultra Street Fighter 4. And Abel, which his background story is he was in a facility, he doesn't know why, he doesn't have a memory of who he is, all he knows is he was experimented on, and it was Shadowloo is the reason why he was there, and so it's like, okay, we have Abel because of Shadowloo, he doesn't know his past, okay, that makes sense, and then suddenly Abel, who's mysteriously and magically walking on a U.S. Air Force base just for no reason, sees Guile, and Guile, for no reason, chucks a sonic boom at a crate, and just says, and Abel's like, wait a minute, I've seen that before. And then Guile's like, tell me, you must tell me. And so, pretty much, and so now there's this like, oh man, what if Charlie is still alive and Charlie freed Abel from the Shadowloo thing and he's still somewhere in Brazil? And so now you have these two alternate theories of, one, Charlie becomes Blanca, and then two, Charlie is still alive in Brazil helping people. And it's like, okay, well, shit, what's going to happen here? And then what changed everything was this trailer. Because in the Street Fighter timeline, Street Fighter 3 happens way after all of this. 3 is basically, Ryu is like older, he's mastered what's called the Denjin Hadoken, where it's basically the ultimate form of a Hadoken that he can throw for I don't want to say for the force of good, but there's two different forces of the Hado, the Dark Hado and the Art of Nothing, and it's basically good and bad.
Yin and Yang is better.
Yin and Yang is a good way to put it, yeah. Where Akuma is essentially the Yang, and Ryu's the Yin, or however you want to spin it. So what happens is you have, after Street Fighter 3, which, we have this way in the future. Like, Ryu is like 40, Chun-Li is like late 30s. Like, all these characters are older and they're matured.
That's why Guile has a kid.
Yeah, and so you get into Street Fighter V, and everybody's watching the first reveals and the first trailers and everything, and you notice that they look older, they look a little bit more like grizzled, they look like they've been through these fights. It's like, okay, so this one probably takes time around 3. So now we're like, I'm sitting here going, okay, well, if this is going to be around 3, we're probably going to expect to see a lot of the later gen characters like Remy, Alex, Yoon, Yang, like all of them. So I'm like, oh, I'm cool with this. And then this trailer comes out, and Chun-Li pops up out of nowhere, and it's like, okay, now all the theories that have been he's Blanca, that's now screwed. The theory that he's still alive helping people in like Brazil, well, he looks pretty beaten up, so slightly screwed.
He looks pretty angry.
He looks very angry, which I'll get to that one in a second too. I'm kind of just trying to get out all the information I can because you want to do this as short as you did. So the thing with Chun-Li is he's always been like, I want to help people. I'm a good guy. Yeah. Oh, let's help people and stuff, dude.
Yeah, friendship.
Yeah, pretty much. And then suddenly he pops in this and he's like ripped apart, and so it's like, oh, that's really weird. And his first opening words are, if you get in my way, I'll have to kill you. And I'm like, that's definitely not the Chun-Li we know. Like, he would not have said that. And so when you look at his face at 37 seconds in the trailer, you see his face dead on. He has this dot in the middle of his head. The thing is with that dot is in Street Fighter 3, Urien had it and Gil had it. And it's part of the Illuminati order that they're a part of. So the thing is, Urien had the powers, but he couldn't fully manifest them to the same way Gil could. Gil had the power to resurrect, and that's where a lot of jokes come from, because at the end of Street Fighter 3, when you're fighting him and you beat him, you're like, oh man, I beat the boss. Hell yeah, he was a bitch. You just hear Gil in the background, resurrection, and he just pops up and you're like, oh, you son of a bitch. He pops up, restores his own life, and that dot on his forehead just glows. And so we have Chun-Li now with that same dot on his forehead, and it glows, and suddenly, here he is. He's back. He's alive. It makes no sense. He's half stapled. What the hell is going on here? And then actually watching the gameplay, the thing is, he is not Chun-Li anymore fighting-wise at all. Sure, he has the sonic boom, but the moves that he does are actually psycho power manifested moves, because he's teleporting the same way Bison does. He's freaking chucking out sonic booms, but they have the psycho power flame attached to them, and so it's like he's not using his own power anymore. He is using something else. So that's where it's just kind of like, crap, story-wise, what's going on here? And one of the big jokes is that if you look at one of his kicks, if you play King of Fighters, he does Rugal's genocide cutter kick. So it's kind of like, okay, so we're taking a little bit from King of Fighters, but at the same time, every fighting game takes something from somewhere else. It's just how it is.
So much that they make jokes about it, like Danny Vicky.
Yeah, literally Dan, the character Dan in Street Fighter with the yellow outfit, the head with like the ponytail, he's a combination of...
Outfit.
Yeah, pink outfit. Sorry, I don't know why I said that. He's got, his head is Robert's and from King of Fighters, and his body is Rio's. So they literally took 2 characters from King of Fighters and was like, let's take his head, put it on his body. And they made fun of him.
Worst character.
Because he's technically worthless, but not completely, but pretty damn worthless. So that's just kind of like the funny thing about it all. So now we have Chun-Li back in this, and he's doing teleports, he's using psycho power. It's like, what is going on here? So the big theory now is that obviously he's alive, he's in front of us, but the big theory is now at the end of Street Fighter 3, Gil didn't die, or maybe he passed on the power to somebody else. Either which way, somehow he's still alive. Chun-Li's alive. We have it right here in front of us. Now, what's weird is the timeline, though. It puts it after Street Fighter 3 or before Street Fighter 3. So this means that every theory that we had through the Street Fighter 2 and 4 era just basically kind of gets blown out of the water to a degree, because all these characters are older. And the cool thing about the trailer in terms of actual reveals at that point, though, is it's kind of hard to word because there's no official quote or phrase for it yet, but every character has essentially a power-up mode where Ryu basically goes into a stance and suddenly his arms have like lightning coursing through them, and his special moves have more power. He can break guards. Chun-Li has a similar one, but instead it's like water that goes around her. So she's a little bit faster, more fluid.
Koshos and it's bullshit.
Yeah, that. Fire out 2 Kokoshos. Well, that's happened before.
Yeah, they haven't fixed the fireball counter.
Well, that's not even confirmed yet, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then what happens after that point is it's called basically, what people are calling it is like an elemental mode or an elemental trigger. You see Charlie strike up his, and all that happens is he covers himself in like a dark like mist for a second, and suddenly whoosh, he's on the other side. He's pulling like straight Wesker bullshit from Marvel vs. Capcom 3. Like straight up, oh, I'm over here now, and now I'm going to do a combo that takes off ridiculous amounts of health, and I'm still a bastard. And so it's like, oh man, this is cool. So now we have Charlie in here doing moves that are nothing like him. He's pulling from powers that are nothing like what should be his. It's crazy stuff. And the other funny thing is at a minute 13, when Ryu gets basically kicked in the head so hard he flies, he falls into a subway. We haven't seen this subway yet in any of the trailers or anything. In the background of Charlie, you see the Chinese restaurant from the first trailer, so it's just kind of like, does this mean that there's different transitions at different points in the level? That's like a cool little gameplay thing. Mm-hmm. So that's all really like awesome. It's like, oh man, I wonder what's going to go on. I wonder how this is going to play. And then at the very end, it's like, rise up, pre-order for beta access, which is pretty cool because it's like beta access has never been something Capcom's done before with a fighting game.
Usually when fighting games go in like a beta or alpha stage, it's arcade only in Japan.
Usually, that's what happens.
So the fact that it's actually available to the populace is actually really cool.
Pretty much. And so the other big thing is after that they have the big character teaser. The cool thing about that is like they've done it once before, and it was when they were revealing all the characters from Super Street Fighter 4 that were coming over from Turbo Zero and the new editions and Third Strike. And so it's like, oh, new characters. And at the very end of that trailer, you see like this weird oil going around the Capcom logo, and you hear Hakan go, "It's time to oil up." So that was the first time they did this whole let's tease a new character at the end of our trailer, and it was really cool. Then they stopped doing it because I don't know why. And so everybody was like, "Oh, that was cool, but it is what it is, I guess." And now flash forward to current day, Killer Instinct has been doing new character reveals every month. And at the end of every new character reveal, they have a small, like, 5-second snippet of the next character that they're going to show you or the next character that's going to come to you. So it's really cool because every trailer we get, we automatically know what we're going to be looking forward to. Like the new one that came out for Argonos, which I don't have any interest in using him because he's a big, like, bulky kind of character, slow, hits hard. Not my kind of thing. It's like a Hulk out of Marvel vs. Capcom. Not my thing. At the very end of it, there's this ghost girl who comes out of nowhere with a naginata, and she's like dressed up in a traditional Japanese like sense.
Fatal frame.
It's very Fatal Frame-ish, and I'm like, this is like a straight up ghost bitch. And then she yells at the camera, has got these like spiky teeth, got her naginata, and I literally got goosebumps, and I was like, new main. I know nothing about her. I'm like, new main.
New waifu.
New waifu. So
for the teaser of this one, I guess it was pretty obvious, like we were saying before, who it is. Did we? We haven't actually said it on the episode.
It's completely obvious that it's Bison for the fact that if you pause it at 1 minute 29 seconds, you see him cover himself in the purple Psycho Power flame, and you can see very easily that it's him. He's got the shoulder guards. He's got the hat. It's Bison.
Yeah.
It's just Bison. That's all there is to it. And this is now where we like close the book on all these theories around Charlie and Nash, and now we have a whole new world because it's like, this is set maybe around the era of Street Fighter 3. Wait a minute, Shadowloo got destroyed around then. Why is he there? All the Shadowloo people are dead. What's going on? And it's like everybody's like, oh god, what's happening here? And the funny thing about it is the Van Damme movie that I was quoting earlier, the popular quote from Bison in that is, the day Bison came and liberated your village was the greatest day of your life. But to me, it was a Tuesday. But for me, it was a Tuesday. And so today's Tuesday, and they revealed Bison. So I'm like, that's... And I'm sitting here. Yeah, that's exactly what I said. I'm like sitting here, I'm like, oh man, it's Bison. And the only thing I was like, for me, it was a Tuesday. It's Tuesday, and I'm sitting there, I'm like, you cheeky bastard. So,
totally planned. It has to be.
Totally planned. Exactly. And so I'm like, oh, that's amazing. And so now this raises up, is Shadowloo still around? Are people from Shadowloo still alive? Do we still have like the same characters from it? Because like Sagat, Vega, and all of them is just kind of like, where have they gone? Because they've said repeatedly that they're either dead, wandering, or just straight up no longer around. And there's only one surviving member. And in Street Fighter 3, that's Q. He's this gigantic, freaking 6'7" man who wears just a straight iron mask and does not talk. He only just goes.
Except for my first.
Yeah,
that's really amazing, though. Like, since you know the storyline so well, even this last teaser opens up a huge like can of worms kind of thing.
It does.
It's absolutely incredible.
The other big thing is the character Jury, who was introduced in Super Street Fighter 4. It's kind of hard to exactly word this, but Capcom kind of hit gold when they released her, like struck gold, because the thing is, chucking out new characters for a fighting game is not hard to do. Here's a new character, here's a new character, but it's not often that what happens to her happens to other characters, because Jury came out instantly. Everybody loved her. People were talking about her. People were loving her design. People were loving her story. People were just nonstop, like, just in love with this new character. So it wasn't so much a, oh, cool, here's a new character. Oh, well, she can do this. That's pretty awesome, I guess. But instead it was, she kind of hit the floor running, and people, like, fell in love with her. And so now it's like people, when you talk about Street Fighter, of course everybody knows Ryu, Chun-Li, Ken, like, all of them. But to the current day generation, if you start talking about Street Fighter, Jury is one of those names and faces that's associated with it. She has become a very big character. And so my first thoughts when I was seeing a lot of the Street Fighter V stuff was, where is she going to fall into this? Because her storyline is basically Sin, which is Seth's group in Street Fighter 4, didn't manufacture her, but she was in a car accident, and she was pretty much ripped apart. And she literally had her eye, like, somebody shot a round through her left eye, as in a pistol bullet entered her eye and exited out the back of her freaking cranium.
She wasn't ripped apart.
Oh my goodness.
She was banged up, but she wasn't like limbs torn off and shit.
Well, limbs weren't torn off, but she
could have like a similar treatment to Charlie, basically.
It's very similar. She was, according to the actual official sources, she was in critical condition. So she's torn up pretty bad, and her eye is just gone.
Yeah.
I think torn up. I think like her limbs were like ripped off.
We gotta kind of wrap up here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But thank you so much for...
Just the big thing I was trying to say with that is her entire mission was to basically take down Shadowloo. The fact that Bison is there means that we could be seeing them bringing her back. So
like a clashing.
That's interesting.
Pretty much.
Awesome. All right, thank you so much for this like incredible in-depth description of both the trailer and just the world of Street Fighter. I've really enjoyed like I don't know too much of it at all, and it's been really incredible, like how deep this trailer really is to all the minute details of everything.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
That was really awesome.
Yeah, he didn't even get into like the gameplay aspects of it. This is just a story and like the what ifs.
It's a bunch of theories, but the thing is, the stories and the what ifs and the theories are the things that lead to what could be happening. Because like when people boil down the theories, they're like, this could be happening. And then it ends up being what's happening. It sets a time frame and it sets a timeline that events are going to happen. People are going to pop up.
Yeah. Excellent. Very cool. So, yeah, looking forward to more teasers and stuff and hearing more of your opinions on what the heck is happening.
More Street Fighter 5 stuff coming sooner rather than later, at least.
Yeah, I mean, if more stuff comes out if you want. I can do more breakdowns, like anything from gameplay to story. It's like I said, Street Fighter is a very like big part of my childhood and my gaming life.
Yeah.
That would be awesome. All right, so thanks guys for listening, and thank you Atticus and Bariah for joining us again for another Fan Voice episode.
Yeah.
And so I guess we'll just name off our locations.
Yeah.
Our normal dealio.
Twitter at FanVoicePodcast.
YouTube.com/TheFanVoicePodcast.
Facebook.com/FanVoicePodcast.
Our email, fan@thefanvoice.com.
And our website, fanvoice.com. We've got news, reviews, and all that good stuff.
All right.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So
right.
Thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you all later.
All right. See you guys later.
Bye.
Bye.